You're sitting in a room full of people who are laughing. And you're laughing too. But if someone stopped the moment and asked you, how do you actually feel right now? You'd have to think about it. Not because the answer is complicated, because there isn't one. There's just a kind of quiet, a flatness behind everything. Like watching the world through a screen, instead of living inside it. And the most unsettling part isn't the emptiness. It's that you've stopped noticing it's there. If that just describes something you've never quite had. Words for subscribe right now. This channel exists for exactly that feeling. And what's coming next in this video might be one of the most important things you watch this year. Before we go into the signs, I need to say something that most videos like this skip entirely. This is not your personality. You were not born this way. You did not come into the world already closed off, already distant, already unable to feel things the way other people seem to. What happened is something much more specific and much more understandable than that. At some point in your life, feeling things fully became too costly. Maybe it happened in childhood, in a home where emotions were ignored, punished, or used as weapons. Maybe it happened in a relationship that broke something open in you. Maybe it happened slowly, over years of disappointment, of needing people who weren't there, of reaching out and finding nothing on the other side. And so your system, your brilliant, adaptive, survival-oriented system made a decision. Not a conscious one. Not a choice you made one morning, but a quiet, automatic, deeply intelligent decision. If feeling leads to pain, then feeling less is safer. That's not a character flaw. That's adaptation. And the fact that you're here, watching this, still searching for something, that already tells me the door isn't completely closed. Here's what's actually happening inside the brain when this occurs. The nervous system has two primary modes when it comes to threat. You've probably heard of fight or flight, but there's a third response that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And it's the one most emotionally shut down people live in without realizing it. It's called the freeze response, or in more chronic forms, emotional numbing, when the brain experiences emotional pain repeatedly, especially early in life, especially without support. The prefrontal cortex starts creating a buffer, a kind of internal distance between you and your own emotional experience. It's not that the emotions stop existing. They don't. They're still there, running underneath everything, influencing your decisions, your body, your relationships. But your access to them gets restricted. Like a pipe that's been partially blocked. The water is still moving. You just can't feel the pressure anymore. And over time, that restricted access starts to feel completely normal. It starts to feel like you. That's why these signs are so hard to recognize. From the inside, let's look at them one by one. You feel numb, not calm. There's a difference between peace and absence. And deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you know which one you're living in. Peace feels full. It feels like being okay with what is. It has a kind of warmth to it, even in the quiet. What you feel is different. It's not that things are good. It's that things don't land. Someone shares news that should excite you, and you generate the appropriate reaction, but nothing inside actually moves. You watch yourself respond the way you're supposed to respond. You say the right things. You make the right face, but the feeling itself, it's like trying to tune into a radio station that's just out of range. You get static, you get the outline of something, but never quite the thing itself. In daily life, this looks like sitting through a moment that should be meaningful, a birthday, a reunion, a quiet Sunday that's objectively beautiful, and feeling strangely untouched by it. Not ungrateful, just unreachable. Psychologically, this emerges from chronic emotional overload. When the nervous system is flooded too often by stress, by instability, by pain that had no outlet, it begins reducing the amplitude of emotional signals across the board. It doesn't just turn down the painful ones. It turns down all of them. Joy, excitement, tenderness, longing, all of it gets quieter. The brain is trying to protect you from the next wave. It just doesn't know the storm already passed. The invisible consequence is this. When you can't feel the good things either, life starts to feel like something you're getting through rather than something you're actually living. And you can spend years that way without ever quite being able to name what's wrong. You avoid emotional conversations, not loudly, not obviously. You don't storm out of rooms or refuse to talk. You're too good at this for anything that dramatic. You deflect. You redirect. You listen genuinely sometimes, but always from a slight distance, like you're a consultant brought in to assess the situation, rather than someone actually inside it. Someone says, "I've been feeling really disconnected from you lately," and something in your chest tightens immediately. Not because you don't care, but because you can already feel the conversation pulling you somewhere you don't know how to navigate. So you manage it. You say something reasonable. You acknowledge their feeling. You maybe even apologize, but you never quite go there to that raw, unguarded place where real emotional contact happens. In daily life. This looks like becoming suddenly very practical in moments that call for vulnerability. Someone is crying and you find yourself thinking about what they need: water, tissues, a solution, rather than just sitting with them in it. Or someone tries to talk about the relationship, and you notice you're already mentally organizing your response, instead of actually feeling what they're saying. The psychological origin of this is learned emotional danger. If you grew up in an environment where emotional expression led to conflict, to punishment, to someone else falling apart, or to being completely dismissed, your nervous system cataloged emotional conversations as threats, not metaphorically, literally. The same neural pathways that respond to physical danger fire up when someone says, "We need to talk." The invisible consequence is the slow erosion of depth in your relationships. People feel it even when they can't name it. They sense that there's a wall somewhere. And after a while, they stop trying to find the door. You don't miss people the way others do, you've noticed it. Someone talks about missing a friend so much it physically aches. And you think, quietly, privately, I don't think I've ever felt that. Not really. When people leave your life, move away, drift apart, stop calling, you register the absent. You notice they're gone, but it doesn't hollow you out the way it seems to hollow out everyone else. And sometimes that feels like strength. Like you're just more self-sufficient, more independent, less needy. But there are moments, usually late at night, usually when it's quiet, where you wonder if something is actually missing, not in them. In daily life, this looks like not reaching out first. Not because you're playing games, but because the urge just isn't there in the same way. Weeks pass and you realize you haven't thought about someone you genuinely care about. Not out of neglect, out of a kind of emotional distance that runs automatically. The psychological origin of this goes back to attachment. When early connections with parents, caregivers, people who were supposed to stay were inconsistent, painful, or simply absent, the attachment system learns to expect loss. And the most efficient way to survive expected loss is to preemptively detach. To not let the bond form too completely in the first place. It's not coldness. It's armor that was built so long ago you forgot you're wearing it. The invisible consequence is that over time, relationships start to feel thin. Not because the people aren't good, but because you're not fully letting them in. And you start to feel a kind of loneliness that doesn't make sense, because you're surrounded by people who care about you, and you still feel fundamentally alone. You intellectualize everything. This one is tricky, because from the outside and even from the inside, it looks like self-awareness. It looks like growth. It looks like you've done the work. Something painful happens. And within hours, sometimes minutes, you're already building the framework around it. You understand the psychology of what occurred. You can trace the patterns. You can explain exactly why you feel the way you feel, or why you should feel the way you feel, with impressive clarity and precision. You've probably even helped other people process their emotions, using insights that came from your own unprocessed experiences. That's how functional this particular defense mechanism is. In daily life. This looks like turning every emotional experience into an intellectual exercise. A relationship ends and, instead of grieving it, you analyze it. A hard conversation happens, and instead of sitting with the discomfort, you immediately start extracting the lesson. You journal in insights. You think in frameworks. You explain in theories. And here's what's so seductive about it. It feels like processing. It genuinely does. But processing and understanding are not the same thing. You can have perfect insight into your pain without ever actually feeling it. The psychological origin here is often an environment where emotions weren't safe, but intellect was valued, where the way to be acceptable, to be loved, to be praised, was to be smart, logical, composed. Emotions were messy. Emotions caused problems, but a well-reasoned argument, that was safe. That was rewarded. So the mind learned to root everything through thought instead of feeling. The invisible consequence is that things accumulate. You think you've dealt with something because you understand it. But understanding without feeling is like reading about swimming without ever getting in the water. The body still doesn't know how. And eventually, the weight of all those explained but unprocessed experiences starts pressing against something inside you, and you don't even know why you feel so tired all the time. Before we go further, if you're recognizing yourself in any of this, leave a comment below, even just a number, the sign that hit closest to home. You don't have to explain anything. Just mark that you were here, that you felt this. And if this is reaching something in you, hit like. It's a small thing that helps this reach someone else who's been searching for exactly this. You feel uncomfortable receiving love. Not giving it. Receiving it. Giving is easy. Giving keeps you in control. Giving means you're the one deciding how much, when, and in what form. You can love people from a safe distance. You can be generous and warm and thoughtful, and still never let anyone actually get close enough to matter. But receiving? Someone looks at you with genuine tenderness, and something in you wants to look away. Someone says, "I'm really proud of you," and you immediately minimize it. It was nothing. Anyone would have done it. Someone tries to take care of you when you're sick or struggling, and it feels wrong, uncomfortable, almost intrusive. Like you don't quite know what to do with it. Like some part of you doesn't believe you're supposed to have it in daily life. This looks like deflecting compliments before they can land. Changing the subject when someone expresses how much you mean to them. Feeling a strange irritation or anxiety when someone is too attentive, too caring, too present. Pulling back right after a moment of real closeness, not dramatically. Just enough to restore the distance that feels safe. The psychological origin of this is almost always a history where love was conditional, inconsistent, or painful. Where affection came with strings, where people who were supposed to love you also hurt you, disappointed you, or left. The nervous system learned a devastating equation. Love equals vulnerability equals danger. And so now the devastating equals danger. And so now, a devastating equation. Love equals vulnerability equals danger. Love danger, it's danger. And so now, even when the love being offered is clean and safe and real, the body doesn't know the difference. It responds to tenderness the same way it once responded to threat. The invisible consequence is one of the saddest ones on this list. You spend your life quietly hungry for connection, for warmth, for someone to truly see you, and then, when it arrives, something in you rejects it before it can reach the part that needs it most. And you wonder why you always end up feeling alone, even in relationships with people who genuinely love you. You shut down under stress. Not everyone breaks under pressure. Some people go somewhere else entirely. The conversation gets tense and you go blank. Not strategically. Not as a tactic. The lights just go out somewhere inside and suddenly you have nothing. No words, no feelings, no access to any of it. Someone needs you to be emotionally present in a hard moment and you're standing right there, physically present. Eyes open and completely unreachable. Even to yourself, you want to respond. You can see that something is needed from you. But it's like trying to open a door that has no handle on your side in daily life. This looks like becoming eerily calm in situations that should produce a reaction. Arguments where you go silent and cold instead of engaged. Crisis moments where you function efficiently but feel nothing. Conversations where someone is crying and you can see their pain clearly but feel like you're watching it from the other side of a window. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes hours or days later, something cracks, something surfaces. A wave of feeling that arrives delayed, out of context, when you're alone and didn't expect it. The psychological origin of this is the freeze response, the third branch of the autonomic nervous system's threat response and the least understood. When fight and flight are both unavailable, when the threat is emotional and there's nowhere to go, and fighting makes it worse, the system immobilizes. It shuts non-essential processes down. And in a nervous system that learned early that emotional expression was dangerous or useless, emotional response gets classified as non-essential. The freeze response was designed to be temporary, but when it gets activated chronically, it starts becoming the default setting. The invisible consequence is that the people closest to you experience your silence as abandonment, as indifference, as not caring. And you can't explain that it's not that because you don't fully understand it yourself. So you watch relationships fracture over something you didn't choose and don't know how to fix. You feel disconnected from your own life. This one is quieter than the others, less dramatic. But in some ways, the most pervasive, you're there. You show up. You do the things. The work, the plans, the conversations, the routines. From the outside, your life looks functional, maybe even full. But from the inside, there's something translucent between you and all of it, like you're present but not quite in it. Like you're living your life slightly adjacent to yourself. You catch yourself at a gathering thinking, I should be enjoying this. You finish something you worked hard for and feel nothing where satisfaction should be. You look at your own life sometimes like it belongs to someone else. Not with resentment, just with a kind of strange, weightless disconnection. In daily life, this looks like a persistent sense that real life is happening somewhere else. Or will happen later, or happen before, but is somehow not quite this. It looks like going through weeks that blur together, like being technically present in your own experiences without being emotionally inhabited by them. The psychological term for this is derealization, or depersonalization, and in its chronic low-grade form. It's far more common than most people realize. It emerges when the gap between internal experience and external reality becomes too uncomfortable to bridge, so the mind stops trying to bridge it. It just hovers above instead. The invisible consequence is time. You look back and realize you were there for all of it. Every moment was technically yours, but you weren't fully inside any of it. And there's a particular grief that comes with that. Not for what was lost, but for what was present and somehow still missed. You think this is just who I am. And here it is. The last sign. The one that makes all the others permanent if left unexamined. I'm not an emotional person. I've always been this way. I don't really need that much from people. I'm just more independent than most. These sentences feel like self-knowledge. They feel like honesty, like you've accepted yourself clearly and without illusion. But there's a difference between knowing yourself and having made peace with a story about yourself that was written during your hardest moments. Shutdown is not a self. It is a strategy. And strategies get built for specific contexts in specific seasons to survive specific kinds of pain. They don't automatically dissolve when the context changes. They just become part of how you move through the world, until you can see them clearly enough to choose something different in daily life. This looks like using your emotional distance as an identity marker, being quietly proud of not needing much, finding a kind of safety in the predictability of your own numbness, feeling vaguely threatened when someone suggests that what you think of as strength might actually be protection. The psychological origin of this sign is simple. The longer a coping mechanism remains in place, the more integrated it becomes into your sense of self. The nervous system doesn't just use it, it becomes it. And then any challenge to it feels like a challenge to your identity rather than an invitation to something larger. The invisible consequences. That this sign closes the door on all the others. Because if this is just who you are, if it's fixed, if it's identity, if it's you, then there's nothing to examine. Nothing to gently, carefully open, and that's the loss. Not the shutdown itself, but the belief that it's permanent. Stop for a moment, just stop. If you've been seeing yourself in this, in any of it, in all of it, I want to say something directly to you. This is not weakness, not even close. What you developed, this distance, this quiet, this way of moving through the world without fully landing in it. This was intelligence. This was your system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Under conditions that were genuinely hard, you didn't shut down because you're broken. You shut down because at some point, staying open cost more than you had available, and you survived. You're here, still searching, still watching, still somewhere underneath all of that wanting something more than what this feels like. That wanting? That is not nothing, that is everything. Here is what I want you to hold on to after this video ends. This was adaptation, not destiny, not identity, not the permanent shape of who you are. The nervous system that learned to close, that same system can learn, slowly, carefully to open again. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment of breakthrough, but in the smallest possible increments over time, with enough safety and enough patience, and the micro steps are smaller than you think. The next time you feel even the faintest trace of something, a flicker of sadness, a hint of warmth, a moment of longing, don't rush past it. Don't analyze it. Don't explain it away before it has a chance to exist. Just notice it. Name it, even silently. There's something here. And stay with it for 10 seconds longer than feels comfortable. That's it. That's the whole practice. Not a breakthrough. Not a transformation, just 10 seconds of not running from what's there, because the way back to yourself is not a door you kick open. It's a door you learn very gently to stop holding shut. When was the last time you actually felt something and stayed with it, not analyzed it, not explained it, not waited for it to pass. Just felt it. Leave that answer in the comment. Even one word, even just the name of the feeling, because putting language to it, even here, even anonymously, is already a step back toward yourself. If this video reached something in you, like it and share it with someone who's been living quietly behind glass. They might not know how to ask for this, but they need it. Subscribe if you want more of this. Real psychology. No performance. No easy answers. Just honest conversations about the parts of being human that most people are too afraid to name out loud. And the video appearing on your screen right now. Watch it next. It goes even deeper into what's underneath all of this. You don't have to figure everything out today. You just have to stay a little longer than you normally would. That's enough.